My
14
husband looked me
months
dead in
ago,
the eyes
my
and told
life
200
changed
people he was
forever.
divorcing me. I was
Tonight,
7 months
we
pregnant,
celebrate that
standing
change.
there in a $47
Thank you all for coming.
while his mistress
I have a
reported
very
my
important
humiliation
announcement
for the
regarding the
internet.
future of
4
Caldwell
million people
Industries
watched me
and my
cry.
impending
4
divorce.
million people laughed. His mother stood up and clapped. She told me to try a homeless shelter. She said they'd take my type. What none of them knew, what I did not even know, was that I had been worth $1.3 billion since I was 18 years old. My husband divorced the richest woman he would ever meet, and he had absolutely no idea. But here is the part that is going to blow your mind. His mother? She is working at a grocery store now. His mistress? She served me champagne at my own charity gala. And him? He is sitting in a prison cell, writing me letters I will never open. Stay until the end of this story, because the satisfying way karma destroyed every single person who hurt me. You do not want to miss it. But first, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell right now. I promise you, this story is worth it. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever been completely underestimated by someone who should have believed in you? Now let me take you back to where it all began. I will never forget the moment my husband stood in front of 200 people and announced he was divorcing me. I was 7 months pregnant. My feet were so swollen I could barely fit into my only pair of decent shoes. My back ached from standing at 3 different jobs that week. And I had spent my last $47 on a simple blue maternity dress because Derek said this party was important. He said he needed me there. He said it would change everything. He was right about that last part, just not in the way I expected. What he did not tell me was why he really wanted me there. What he did not tell me was that I was walking into my own execution. Everyone laughed when he made the announcement. 200 people in designer clothes, holding champagne glasses that cost more than my weekly paycheck, and they laughed at me. They pulled out their phones to record my humiliation like it was entertainment. His mother actually stood up from her table and clapped, tears of joy streaming down her face as she shouted that her son finally deserved better than me. And I just stood there, frozen. One hand on my pregnant belly, feeling my baby kick as if she somehow knew that something terrible was happening to us. But here is the thing that nobody in that room knew. Not Derek, not his cruel mother, Patricia, not his beautiful mistress, Victoria, who walked up on stage and kissed him while the cameras captured my destruction. Not even me. I had been a billionaire since I was 18 years old. My grandmother, a woman I never got to meet, left me $1.3 billion in real estate holdings the day she died. Properties in 15 countries, office buildings that touched the clouds in cities I had never visited, hotels where presidents and celebrities slept, shopping centers that generated more money in a single day than I had made in my entire life, and I had absolutely no idea. For 14 years, I worked 3 jobs until my body screamed for rest. I skipped meals so my husband could eat. I let him take my savings and make me feel worthless. I sat in the rain, homeless, and 7 months pregnant, believing I had nothing and no one. Derek Mitchell divorced the richest woman he would ever meet in his entire life. He just did not know it yet. But before I tell you this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happened next, the way karma came for every single person who hurt me, the way my life transformed from absolute rock bottom to something I could never have imagined. You do not want to miss a single second of it. Trust me on this one. You are going to want to see how this ends. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Elena Parker, and 14 years before that horrible night at the Wellington Grand Hotel, I was just a scared 18-year-old girl watching her mother die. The hospital room smelled like antiseptic and fading flowers that nobody had remembered to replace. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead with that particular frequency that makes everything feel more hopeless than it already is. My mother, Catherine, had been fighting cancer for 2 years, and we both knew she was losing the battle. Her hand felt like paper in mine, fragile and cold, and somehow already starting to let go of this world. She had been sleeping for most of the afternoon, but as the sun started to set outside her window, her eyes fluttered open. She looked at me with a clarity that surprised me, as if death had given her one final moment of perfect awareness. Elena, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping of the machines. I need to give you something. She reached under her pillow with effort that clearly cost her and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was thick, official looking, made of expensive cream-colored paper. My name was written on the front in her careful handwriting, the same handwriting that had labeled my lunch bags throughout elementary school and signed my permission slips and written me notes of encouragement before every important test. Do not open this until you really need it, she said. Promise me, Elena. Promise me you will wait. I took the envelope, confused and scared and trying not to cry. Mom, what is this? What are you talking about? A safety net from your grandmother. She paused and I could see the effort it took for her to form each word. But Elena, I want you to build your own life first, earn your own way. That is what makes a person strong. That is what I want for you. I did not understand. My mother had never talked about her parents. Whenever I asked about my grandparents as a child, she would change the subject or say they were gone. I had always assumed they died before I was born, some tragedy she did not want to discuss. Promise me, she said again, her grip tightening on my hand with surprising strength for someone so close to the end. I promise, Mom, I will not open it until I really need it. She smiled then, the last real smile I would ever see from her. A smile full of love and sadness and something else I did not recognize at the time. Hope, maybe, or faith that I would find my way. She died that night, just after midnight. The machine started screaming, and nurses rushed in, and suddenly I was standing in the hallway while strangers tried to save the only family I had ever known. But it was too late. She was already gone, and I was completely alone in the world at 18 years old. I kept my promise to her. I put that envelope in a box with her other things. Her favorite blue scarf that still smelled like her perfume. A few photographs from happier times. A journal I could not bring myself to read because her handwriting on the pages would make the loss too real. I moved that box from apartment to apartment over the next 14 years. Through college, where I worked part-time jobs to pay tuition my mother's small life insurance could not cover. Through meeting Derek in my sophomore year economics class, where he made me laugh and made me feel like maybe I was not so alone after all. Through our wedding, small and cheap, but full of what I thought was love. Through every struggle and sacrifice and disappointment that came after, I never opened the envelope. I kept my promise. If I had broken that promise, everything would have been different. That envelope contained legal documents showing I had inherited Ashford Holdings on my 18th birthday, the same day my grandmother Margaret passed away. A letter from her explaining our family history, why my mother had run away, how much they had searched for her and for me. Contact information for my grandfather, William Ashford, and the family attorney, Thomas Wright, both of whom had been waiting 14 years for me to reach out. I had been worth $1.3 billion for 14 years. While I clipped coupons and skipped meals and wore shoes with holes in them because I could not afford new ones, I was technically one of the wealthiest women in America, and I had absolutely no idea. Instead of inheriting my fortune, I inherited Derek Mitchell. We met in our sophomore year of college during the most boring economics lecture I have ever experienced. The professor droned on about supply and demand curves while I struggled to keep my eyes open after working the late shift at the campus library the night before. Derek was sitting 2 rows ahead of me, and he kept turning around to make faces whenever the professor said something particularly dry. He caught my eye during one of these moments and winked, and I had to cover my mouth to keep from laughing out loud. After class, he waited for me outside the lecture hall. I am Derek, he said, extending his hand with a confidence that I found immediately attractive. And I think we are going to be friends because anyone who almost got us both kicked out of Economics 101 for laughing is clearly my kind of person. He was charming, ambitious, full of big dreams about starting his own technology company and changing the world. He talked with his hands when he got excited, and his eyes lit up like fireworks when he described his vision for the future. I fell hard. The kind of love where you think nothing can ever go wrong. The kind where you build your entire identity around another person because you have never felt so seen, so wanted, so completely alive. We got married right after graduation in a tiny ceremony that we could barely afford. Cheap champagne that gave me a headache. A dress I bought on sale at a department store that was going out of business. Our guest list was small, just a few friends from college, and Derek's mother, Patricia, who looked at me throughout the entire ceremony like I was something unpleasant she had accidentally stepped in. But I did not care about Patricia's obvious disapproval. I had Derek. I had love. I had dreams of building a beautiful life together. For the first year, things were good. We lived in a small apartment with thin walls and noisy neighbors, but we did not mind. We ate cheap dinners of pasta and canned sauce, but we ate them together, talking about our dreams until midnight. Derek was going to build his company. I was going to support him until it took off. Then we would buy a house, have children, live happily ever after. That was the plan anyway. Derek's first startup failed within 8 months. An app that was supposed to revolutionize grocery shopping, except no one wanted to use it. He lost $10,000 of investor money and came home looking like someone had died. I held him while he cried. I told him it was okay. I told him that failure was just part of the journey to success. I believed it too. I believed in him. The second startup failed 6 months later, a subscription service for office supplies that could not compete with Amazon. He lost another $15,000 and his two co-founders quit to take corporate jobs. The third failure came a year after that, a social media platform for pet owners that launched the same week as three similar apps from better-funded competitors. $20,000 gone. Derek stopped talking about his dreams and started drinking more. Each failure hit him harder than the last. The light in his eyes that had attracted me in that economics classroom started dimming. He became distant, frustrated, angry at the world and everyone in it, especially me. I do not know when the blame started shifting in his direction, but gradually I became the reason for everything wrong in his life. If I had more connections, he could have found better investors. If I came from a better family, doors would open for him. If I were more successful in my own career, I could fund his ideas myself. The bills piled up: credit card debt, student loans, medical bills from the time Derek broke his arm and we did not have insurance. We could not afford basic things anymore, like getting the car fixed when it made that terrible grinding noise, or buying new clothes when the old ones wore through. So I did what I thought any good wife would do. I worked, and worked, and worked some more. By the time I was 32 and 7 months pregnant with our daughter, I was holding down 3 jobs just to keep us afloat while Derek spent his days networking and dreaming and failing. Let me tell you what my life looked like in those final months before everything changed. 5 in the morning, my alarm would scream me awake in our cramped studio apartment. I would haul my pregnant body out of bed, trying not to wake Derek, who would sleep until noon most days. I would put on my coffee shop uniform, the green polo shirt and black pants that always smelled like espresso no matter how many times I washed them, and I would take the bus across town to start my first shift. 6 hours on my feet, making lattes and cappuccinos and complicated drinks with names I could barely pronounce. Smiling at customers who looked through me like I was furniture. Ignoring the ache in my back and the swelling in my ankles because I needed every hour I could get. $11 an hour plus tips, which averaged out to maybe $3 extra per shift if I was lucky. 1 in the afternoon, I would take the bus back home and switch to my second job. Remote data entry for a company that processed insurance claims. Mind-numbing work, typing endless strings of numbers into endless spreadsheets, but it paid $14 an hour, and I could do it from our tiny apartment while sitting down, which my pregnant body desperately needed. 6 in the evening, I would change into my black dress and take the subway downtown to my third job. Hostess at an upscale restaurant called Maurizio's, where wealthy people came to spend more on a single meal than I made in a week. I would stand at the front podium, greeting guests with a smile I did not feel, leading them to tables covered in white linen and crystal glasses, watching them laugh and drink and enjoy lives I could not even imagine. The rich customers at Maurizio's never really saw me. I was invisible to them, just another service worker in a city full of service workers. Sometimes they would look right through me when I spoke, like I was not even there. Sometimes they would hand me their coats without making eye contact, the way you would hand something to a piece of furniture. I tried not to let it bother me. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself that once Derek's business took off, everything would be different. I was such a fool. Ladies, I need you to hear me on this one. Never, and I mean never, sacrifice everything for someone who would not do the same for you. Always keep something for yourself, your own career, your own savings, your own identity separate from your relationship. I learned this lesson the hardest way possible, and I do not want you to make the same mistake I did. While I was working 60 to 70 hours a week with a baby growing inside me, Derek was doing what he called networking, which meant playing golf at a public course with other men who had failed at business, drinking at bars with potential investors who never actually invested anything, having meetings that went nowhere and produced nothing except restaurant bills that I paid for. He had not held a real job in over 2 years. 4 failed startups, and somehow it was always someone else's fault. The investors did not understand his vision. The market was not ready for his ideas. His partners betrayed him. The economy was against him. Never his fault. Never once did he look in the mirror and wonder if maybe, just maybe, the problem was him. I found out later that he had been meeting with Victoria Caldwell during those networking sessions, but I did not know about Victoria yet. That revelation was coming, and when it arrived, it would destroy what little faith I had left. I had been secretly saving money for the baby. Every tip I earned at the coffee shop that I did not absolutely need for groceries. Every extra dollar from data entry projects. Little bits of change here and there that I hid in an envelope in my underwear drawer. The one place I knew Derek would never think to look. $3,400. It had taken me 8 months to save that much, and it was not a lot by most standards, but it felt like a fortune to me. Enough for diapers and formula and a secondhand crib. Enough to give our daughter a decent start, even if we could not give her much else. One night I came home from my shift at Maurizio's around 11:30. My feet were throbbing. My back felt like someone had spent the evening hitting it with a hammer. I was so tired I could barely see straight, but I wanted to check on my savings. I had been adding to it slowly, and counting the money had become a small comfort, a reminder that I was building something, even if everything else felt like it was falling apart. I went to my drawer, opened the envelope. Empty. My heart stopped. I checked again, thinking I must have put the money somewhere else and forgotten. I searched the entire drawer, the closet, under the mattress, everywhere I could think of. The money was gone. Derek was in the living room watching television and drinking a beer like nothing in the world was wrong. I walked out on shaking legs, the empty envelope clutched in my fist. "Derek," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "where is the money? The baby fund?" He did not even look away from the screen. I needed it for an investment opportunity. Victoria's father is putting together a deal, and I could not pass it up. That was for the baby. My voice cracked. For diapers, for a crib, for everything she is going to need when she arrives. He finally turned to look at me, and there was something in his eyes I had never seen before. Something cold and dismissive and almost cruel. "And when this deal goes through, we will have 10 times that amount. Stop being so small-minded, Elena. This is why we are still poor. This is why I can never get ahead. You do not understand how business works." I stared at him. This man I had married. This man I had sacrificed everything for. This man who had just stolen the money I saved for our daughter and was telling me I was the problem. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to throw something. I had worked 60 hours that week with a baby pressing on my bladder and my ankles swelling until my shoes left marks on my skin. I had skipped lunch 3 days in a row so there would be enough food for him to have dinner. I had worn the same 3 maternity outfits for 5 months because I could not afford new clothes. And he called me small-minded, but I was too exhausted to fight, too beaten down by months and years of being told I was not enough. So I just nodded and went to bed hungry, while my husband sat in the living room, spending money I had earned on dreams that would never come true. That was the first time I heard Victoria's name. It would not be the last. A few days later, Derek's mother came to visit. Patricia Mitchell carried herself like she was royalty who had temporarily fallen on hard times, which was essentially accurate. The Mitchell family had been old money once, generations ago, with a big house in Connecticut, and membership at the right country clubs, and all the social advantages that came with wealth. But bad investments and poor decisions had eroded that fortune over the decades, leaving Patricia with expensive tastes and no way to pay for them. She blamed everyone but herself and her precious son for their reduced circumstances. Immigrants, Democrats, the economy, the liberal elite, anyone and anything except the Mitchell family's own choices. And she especially blamed me. She walked into our cramped studio apartment that afternoon and looked around with theatrical disgust, her nose wrinkling as if she could smell poverty in the air. My son had options, she said, settling onto our worn couch with the air of someone doing it an enormous favor. Victoria Caldwell was interested in him back in college. Her father Harrison owns half of Connecticut. But no, Derek chose you instead. I love your son, Patricia. I said it as calmly as I could manage. I am doing everything I can to support him and help him succeed, she laughed. Actually laughed, a sharp and cruel sound that echoed off the thin walls of our apartment. Everything you can is clearly not enough, is it? Look at this place. Look at how you live. Look at yourself. Her eyes traveled over my pregnant body with unconcealed contempt, taking in my swollen belly and my tired face and my cheap maternity clothes that I had bought at a thrift store. She continued, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow made her words even more vicious. There are rumors about that baby. I froze. What are you talking about? Derek told me you two were having problems. In the bedroom, she smiled, clearly enjoying my discomfort. For months before you got pregnant. People talk, Elena. People notice things. And they wonder whose baby that really is. The room seemed to tilt around me. My own husband was spreading rumors that our daughter might not be his? That is a lie, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek and I have never had those kinds of problems. This is his daughter. I have never been with anyone else. Is it a lie? Patricia's smile widened. Because my son says differently. And I have known my son for 35 years, while I have only known you for 10. Who do you think I believe? I could not respond, could not find the words. The woman I had tried so desperately to please for a decade was sitting in my home, accusing me of infidelity based on lies my own husband had told her about our intimate life. She left shortly after, satisfied with the devastation she had caused. I sat alone in our apartment for hours after she was gone, one hand on my belly, feeling my baby kick. Your father loves you, I whispered to her. He is just stressed. Things will get better. They have to get better. I was lying to both of us. 3 days later, I discovered the affair. I had been at work at Maurizio's when a sudden wave of morning sickness hit me, even though it was evening and I was supposed to be past the first trimester when that happened. I barely made it to the bathroom before I was violently ill, and when I came out, my manager took one look at my pale face and told me to go home before I scared the customers. It was only 8:30, much earlier than I usually finished. I thought about going back to our apartment, but then I remembered that Derek had mentioned an investor meeting downtown at some upscale restaurant. Maybe I could stop by and surprise him, show support for his efforts, remind him that we were supposed to be a team. I found the restaurant easily. It was called the Carlton, and it was exactly the kind of place Derek dreamed of being able to afford someday. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, white tablecloths on every table, wine lists that probably did not even include prices because if you had to ask, you could not afford it. I felt completely out of place standing outside in my black hostess dress, but I went in anyway. I told the maitre d' that I was looking for my husband, described Derek, and he pointed me toward a corner booth near the back. And there he was, my husband of 10 years, the father of my unborn child, with Victoria Caldwell. She was everything I was not, polished and perfect in a way that seemed effortless, but probably cost thousands of dollars to achieve. Designer dress that hugged her figure in all the right places, blonde hair that looked like she had just stepped out of a professional salon, a watch on her wrist that I would later learn cost $40,000. She was feeding Derek a strawberry, holding it up to his lips while he bit into it, juice running down his chin while she laughed and wiped it away with her napkin. Her other hand was sliding up his thigh under the table, her fingers disappearing beneath the white linen tablecloth in a way that left absolutely no room for innocent interpretation. They were leaning close to each other, speaking in whispers, intimate in a way that told me this was not the first time they had met like this. This was not a business meeting. This was an affair. I stood there frozen, unable to move or speak. 7 months pregnant in my work uniform that smelled like other people's expensive food. Swollen ankles, dark circles under my eyes from months of insufficient sleep and constant work. A far cry from the beautiful, put-together woman who was currently touching my husband like she owned him. Derek looked up and saw me. For just a moment, maybe half a second, guilt flashed across his face. He knew exactly how this looked. He knew exactly what he was doing and exactly how wrong it was. Then Victoria noticed me too. She followed Derek's gaze, saw me standing there like a ghost at the feast, and she smiled. Not embarrassed, not apologetic, not even surprised. Amused. "Oh," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet restaurant. "This must be the wife." I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to march over to that table and flip it over and demand to know how long this had been going on. I wanted to cry. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to be anyone other than who I was in that moment. But I could not do any of those things. My throat had closed up completely. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor. So I turned around and walked out as fast as my pregnant body would allow, back into the cold night air, back to the bus stop, back to the empty apartment where I would wait alone for a husband who did not come home until 3 in the morning. When Derek finally did come home that night, I was sitting in the dark living room, waiting. "We need to talk about what I saw," I said. He sighed heavily, like I was being exhausting and unreasonable. "What you saw was a business meeting. Victoria's an investor. Her father, Harrison Caldwell, is one of the biggest real estate developers in the state. She is going to help my company finally succeed. She was feeding you, Derek, by hand. Her other hand was on your leg under the table. You are being paranoid." He shook his head with exaggerated disappointment. "It is probably the pregnancy hormones. You know you have been difficult lately." Difficult? I had been difficult. I stood up, my belly making the motion awkward and slow. "I have been working 3 jobs," I said, fighting to keep my voice level. "3 jobs while growing your child. I have skipped meals so you could eat. I gave up my savings so you could chase your dreams. I have done everything I could possibly do to support you. And now you are being paranoid and jealous." He moved toward the bedroom, dismissing me. "This is exactly why I do not tell you things, Elena. You twist everything into drama." He went to bed without another word. I sat alone in the darkness until sunrise, one hand on my belly, feeling our daughter kick while I wondered how my life had gone so terribly wrong. But here is what I did not know at the time, what no one told me until much later. Victoria Caldwell had made Derek an offer, $5 million in investment money for his company, a position as vice president at her father Harrison's real estate development firm, a penthouse apartment in Manhattan with views of Central Park. The only condition? Divorce me before the baby was born. Victoria did not want any baggage. She wanted Derek unattached, focused entirely on her and on the partnership she was proposing. A clean slate, a fresh start, no pregnant wife, no baby, no me. And Derek, the man I had sacrificed everything for, the man I had loved since we were 20 years old, had already agreed to her terms. The party invitation came 1 week later. Derek came home that afternoon with something I had not seen in months, a smile. He was practically bouncing with energy as he walked through the door, more animated than he had been in years. He looked like the man I had fallen in love with in college, full of excitement and possibility. "We are invited to a party," he announced. "A big one. My company just landed a major investor meeting, and this is going to change everything for us. I need you there." I was confused but immediately hopeful. Maybe this was him trying to reconnect. Maybe the stress of his failing businesses had been pulling us apart, and now that things were finally looking up, we could find our way back to each other. Where is it? When? Saturday night, the Wellington Grand Hotel downtown. It is a huge event. All the major players in the industry will be there, and I want you by my side when I announce the new investment. He wanted me by his side. After months of distance and coldness and the obvious affair with Victoria, he wanted me with him. Maybe I had been wrong about what I saw at the Carlton. Maybe it really had been a business meeting, and my pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid. Maybe Derek still loved me and our baby and wanted to make our family work. I know I have been difficult lately, he said, and I felt my heart crack open with hope. I have been stressed about the business and I have taken it out on you, but things are going to be different now. This investment is going to change everything. He even smiled at my belly. I want our daughter to grow up in a better world than this, he said. Saturday night is the first step toward making that happen. I believed him. God help me, I believed every word. Wear something nice for once, he added as he headed toward the bedroom. This is the most important night of my career, and I want you to look the part. Something nice. I had not bought anything new for myself in over a year. Everything I owned was either maternity clothes from the thrift store or work uniforms that needed to be replaced. But this was important. This was Derek trying. This was our chance to rebuild. I went to the secondhand shop downtown the next day and spent $47, almost everything I had left, on a simple blue maternity dress. It was not designer. It was not expensive, but it fit well and the color brought out my eyes, and when I looked in the mirror, I almost felt pretty. I did my own hair the night of the party, carefully styling it the way I used to before exhaustion became my constant companion. I put on makeup for the first time in months, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes and the pallor that came from too many skipped meals. I wore the small pearl earrings my mother had left me, the only nice piece of jewelry I owned. When I looked at my reflection, I saw a ghost of the woman I used to be. The woman who had believed in love and worked hard with a smile and thought that if she just tried hard enough, everything would work out. I actually believed this night might save my marriage. I thought if I just tried harder, looked better, supported Derek more enthusiastically, he would remember why he had married me. I was so desperate for crumbs of affection that I could not see the knife coming. I was walking into my own execution, and I had dressed up for the occasion. The Wellington Grand Hotel was everything I was not. We took a taxi there because our car had finally died the month before and we could not afford to fix it. Derek had complained about the expense, but he said we needed to arrive looking successful. So a taxi it was. The hotel rose up before us like a monument to wealth I could not comprehend. Marble columns flanked the entrance. A red carpet led from the curb to golden doors that must have been 12 feet tall. Uniformed valets rushed to open car doors for guests arriving in Mercedes and BMWs and the occasional limousine. Inside was even more overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with murals that belonged to museums. The marble floors were so polished I could see my reflection in them. Flowers arrangements that were taller than me decorated every corner, and I knew from my work at Maurizio's that arrangements like that cost hundreds of dollars each. The ballroom where the party was being held was already crowded when we arrived. 200 guests, maybe more, all dressed in clothes that cost more than my annual salary. Designer gowns and tailored suits, real diamonds glittering on fingers and around necks. The quiet confidence of people who had never worried about paying rent or buying groceries. I felt wrong the moment we walked through the door. Everyone seemed to be looking at me, whispering behind manicured hands. A few people actually pointed. Something was happening that I did not understand. Then I saw Patricia across the room and my blood ran cold. She was looking at me with an expression I had never seen before. She was smiling. Actually smiling, a warm, genuine smile, like she was happy to see me for the first time in 10 years. That was when I knew something was very, very wrong. Patricia Mitchell had never been happy to see me. Not once, not at my wedding, not when I announced my pregnancy, not ever. I looked around frantically and spotted Victoria near the stage at the front of the ballroom. She was wearing a white dress that probably cost more than our apartment's yearly rent, and she was holding her phone up, already recording. Recording what? The party had barely started. Then I saw Derek walking toward the stage, walking toward a microphone that had been set up in front of a giant screen. Derek, I called out, confused. What is going on? He did not answer. He did not even look at me. He just smiled at the crowd and spoke into the microphone. Thank you all for being here tonight. He was using his charming voice, the one that had made me fall in love with him 14 years ago. I have two announcements that are going to change everything. I touched my belly nervously. The baby kicked, hard, as if she could sense my growing unease. First, Derek continued, I am thrilled to announce that Victoria Caldwell and her father Harrison have agreed to invest $5 million into Mitchell Technologies. This is the partnership that is going to make us all very, very wealthy. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom. Victoria lowered her phone briefly to take a small bow, graceful and beautiful and triumphant. Several people nearby congratulated her, and she accepted their praise like a queen receiving tribute from her subjects. And second, Derek paused dramatically. He turned and looked directly at me across the crowded room. His eyes were cold, empty. The eyes of a stranger I had never met before. I am filing for divorce. Elena, you will receive the papers tomorrow morning. I think we both know this marriage has been over for a long time. The room exploded. Gasps echoed off the crystal chandeliers. I heard someone laugh, a high nervous sound that was quickly joined by others. Murmurs spread through the crowd like ripples in a pist, and then the phones came out. Every single phone in that ballroom pointed at me. 200 people recording my destruction like it was entertainment they had paid to watch. Patricia stood up from her table and clapped. Actually clapped, her hands coming together in enthusiastic applause while tears of joy streamed down her face. Finally, she shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear, my son deserves so much better than this. Finally, he is free. Victoria had resumed recording, her phone aimed directly at my face, a smile playing on her lips that told me she was thoroughly enjoying every second of my humiliation. I could not breathe. My hand was on my belly, feeling my daughter kick frantically, as if she knew our world was ending. The room was spinning, the faces around me blurred into a mass of gawking strangers. Derek, I managed to say, my voice cracking, I am 7 months pregnant. About that, he replied, and his tone was casual, dismissive, cruel in a way I had never heard from him before. We all know there are questions about paternity. I will be requesting a DNA test. Patricia's voice rang out again across the ballroom. We all know that baby is not his. And the crowd laughed. 200 people in designer clothes and expensive jewelry laughed at a pregnant woman being told by her husband that their baby might not be his. They recorded it. They thought it was entertainment. Victoria walked up onto the stage as if this moment had been choreographed in advance. She took Derek's arm possessively and smiled at the crowd. Then she kissed him, deeply, passionately, triumphantly, right there in front of everyone, right there in front of me. The phones captured everything. I could see the screens glowing all around me, recording my husband kissing another woman while I stood frozen and humiliated. Someone near me shouted, "Oh my God, she is literally shaking. Get her face, this is gold." Another voice called out, "This is going to go so viral." I ran. I do not remember making the decision to run. My body just moved on its own, pushing through the crowd of gawking strangers, desperate to escape. Someone stuck out their foot as I passed, and I tripped, barely catching myself on a table before I fell forward onto my pregnant belly. More laughter, more recording. Someone shouted, "Did you see her almost fall? Play that back." I made it to the door, made it outside into the cold night air, made it to the sidewalk before my legs finally gave out, and I collapsed against the wall of the Wellington Grand Hotel, sobbing so hard I could not breathe. 7 months pregnant, alone, destroyed in front of 200 witnesses who had recorded every second for their entertainment. This was the worst moment of my entire life, or so I thought. But there was something I did not know as I sobbed outside that hotel. Across the ballroom, in a quiet corner far from the stage, an elderly man in an expensive but understated suit had watched everything unfold. His name was William Ashford. He was 72 years old, tall and silver-haired, with the quiet confidence of someone who had built an empire from nothing. He carried himself like a man who had nothing left to prove to anyone, because he had already proven everything that mattered, and he was my grandfather. William Ashford had received an invitation to this party because Derek, in his endless quest to attract wealthy investors, had sent invitations to everyone in the real estate industry. Harrison Caldwell and other potential investors, the invitation had read. William had recognized the Caldwell name, had heard rumors about Harrison's daughter and some young entrepreneur she had been seeing. He had come to the party to evaluate his granddaughter's husband before revealing himself to her. He had been planning this moment for 3 years. Ever since his private investigators had finally found me, the granddaughter he had been searching for since his daughter Catherine ran away over 30 years ago. He had watched from a distance, wanting to approach me carefully, to prove that he was really family before disrupting my life with the news of my inheritance. He had been waiting for the right moment. Now, watching Derek Mitchell humiliate me in front of 200 people, watching Patricia Mitchell clap with joy, watching Victoria Caldwell kiss my husband while recording my devastation, he realized the right moment had passed. His hands were shaking, not with fear or weakness, but with rage. 40 years of building an empire, 40 years of learning exactly how to destroy people who deserved it. And his granddaughter, his Catherine's daughter, had just been publicly eviscerated by people who had no idea what kind of enemy they had just made. He pulled out his phone and called his attorney, Thomas Wright. Thomas, he said, his voice controlled but seething with barely contained fury. I need everything on Derek Mitchell and the Caldwell family by morning. Every debt, every law, every skeleton in every closet, every dirty deal and broken promise and secret shame. He paused, watching through the window as I sobbed alone in the parking lot. And prepare the inheritance documents. My granddaughter needs to know the truth. Now, he wanted to go to me immediately, to hold me and tell me who I was and what I was worth. But he knew that approaching a grieving, traumatized woman as a stranger claiming to be family would only frighten and confuse me further. So he watched, and he waited, and he planned. Hold on, sweetheart, he whispered, watching me cry in the cold. Help is coming. Victoria Caldwell posted the video that same night. She uploaded it to every social media platform she could think of with the caption, "When he finally upgrades," followed by 3 laughing emojis and a skull emoji. By sunrise, it had 4 million views. I know this because I watched the view counterclimb in real time. I sat on the floor of our tiny apartment, the apartment that was still in Derek's name because I had trusted him, refreshing the page over and over as strangers discovered my humiliation and decided to share it with everyone they knew. The comments were brutal in a way I could never have imagined. She must have cheated on him. Look at her face when he mentioned the DNA test. Guilty as hell. Honestly, the husband is a king for this. Upgrade secured. Imagine being that pathetic at your big age. Could not even keep a man. The mistress is so much hotter. I mean, obviously, he traded up. She is literally shaking like a Chihuahua limo. Pregnant women should not be at parties anyway. She looks like a beached whale. I read every single one. I do not know why. Maybe I thought I deserved it. Maybe I was looking for someone, anyone, to say that what had happened to me was wrong. I did not find them. The news outlets picked up the story within 24 hours. Pregnant wife gets destroyed at husband's business party was the headline that trended on every platform. Entertainment shows ran segments analyzing my reaction. Talk show hosts made jokes about my humiliation. Podcasters debated whether Derek was a genius or just honest. My face was everywhere. My worst moment was entertainment for millions of strangers who did not know me and did not care about me and thought my pain was funny. Have you ever had something private become public against your will? Have you ever had strangers judge the worst moment of your life without knowing anything about what led to it? I hope you have not, because the feeling is impossible to describe. It is like being skinned alive while everyone watches and laughs. Then the phone call started. Victoria made sure of it. She told me later, much later, that she had personally called each of my employers. She said she was doing them a favor, warning them about the controversy associated with one of their workers. She said she was just looking out for their businesses. She was lying. She was making sure I had nothing left. My boss at the coffee shop called first, the morning after the video went viral. Elena, I am sorry, but customers have recognized you. You are creating a hostile environment just by being here. Some of them have even asked if the pregnant divorced woman really works here. We have to let you go, but I need this job. Please, I have a baby coming. I have bills. I cannot survive without this income. I am sorry. There is nothing I can do. HR already made the decision. The restaurant called an hour later. We are a family establishment, the manager said, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. We cannot have controversy associated with us. I am sure you understand. I understand that I have done nothing wrong. I was the victim at that party, not the villain. Nevertheless, we have to protect our brand. Your final paycheck will be mailed. The data entry company sent an email that afternoon. They did not even have the decency to call. We are restructuring our remote workforce. Your position has been eliminated. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. In 72 hours, I lost all three of my jobs. I checked my bank account. $127.43. Rent was due in 1 week. $1,200. I want you to understand something important right now. When people try to destroy your reputation, when they spread lies and post your pain for entertainment and call your employers to get you fired, their cruelty tells you everything about who they are, not who you are. But in that moment, I could not see that truth. All I could see was my life collapsing around me like a building with its foundation removed. All I could feel was the ground disappearing beneath my feet. I tried to find new work. I spent days applying for every job I could think of. Coffee shops, restaurants, retail stores, data entry positions, anything that would pay me enough to survive. But the video had poisoned everything. One interviewer actually pulled it up on her phone during our conversation, right there in front of me. "Wait," she said, her eyes widening with recognition. "Are you the woman from that divorce video? The one where the husband announced he was leaving at the party?" I felt my face flush with humiliation. Yes, that was me. But that has nothing to do with my ability to do this job. I am a hard worker. I have excellent references from before this happened. I just need a chance to prove myself. She was already shaking her head. "I am sorry. We cannot have that kind of attention on our company. You understand? I did not understand. I had done nothing wrong. I was the victim of a cruel public ambush. But somehow I was the one being punished. The same scene repeated itself over and over. Employers recognized me. They had seen the video. They did not want the drama. They wished me luck but could not help me. No one wanted to hire the pathetic pregnant woman from the viral divorce video. 3 days before rent was due, I came home to find a notice taped to our apartment door. My heart stopped when I saw it. I knew what it meant before I even read the words. The apartment had always been in Derek's name. I had trusted him. I had thought we were a team. I had never imagined that he would use that power against me. But Derek had terminated the lease. He had contacted the landlord and informed them that he was moving out and that I was no longer authorized to live there. The notice gave me 48 hours to vacate. I called the landlord immediately, begging, pleading, offering to pay extra, offering to sign a new lease in my own name. "I am sorry, ma'am," he said, and he did sound genuinely apologetic. "There is nothing I can do. The lease is in his name, and he has the right to terminate it. You have 48 hours. But I am 7 months pregnant. It is the middle of winter. Where am I supposed to go? I really am sorry, but this is not my problem to solve." I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases. That is all I had to show for 32 years of life. 2 suitcases. Everything else in that apartment belonged to Derek or was too big to carry. The furniture, the kitchenware, the baby supplies I had started to collect before he stole my savings. All of it stayed behind. I took my mother's box, the one with her scarf and her photographs in the envelope I had still never opened. I took my 2 suitcases, and I walked out of the apartment where I had spent the last 3 years of my life. I sat down on the curb outside the building because I had nowhere else to go. It started to rain. This is what rock bottom looks like. A pregnant woman sitting on a curb in the rain with 2 suitcases, trying to figure out how she ended up with nothing and no one. I called Derek. The phone rang twice and then went to voicemail. He had seen my name and declined the call. I called Patricia. She actually answered. "Do not you ever call this number again," she said, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. "You are not our problem anymore. You never should have been our problem in the first place." "Please," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "I have nowhere to go. I am pregnant with your grandchild. Can you just help me find somewhere to stay for a few nights? That baby is not my grandchild. We all know you were sleeping around. And even if it was Derek's, you would still be worthless. Patricia, please, I will do anything. I just need help. Try a homeless shelter," she said. her tone almost cheerful. I hear they take your type. She hung up. The rain was coming down harder now, cold, steady rain that soaked through my thin jacket within minutes. I did not have an umbrella. I did not have anywhere to go. I did not have anything. A stranger walked by, a man in a business suit hurrying to get out of the weather. He glanced at me, did a double take, and then his face split into a grin of recognition. "Oh my God," he said, actually stopping to laugh at me. "It is the divorce girl from that video. Hey, where is your husband?" He kept walking, still laughing, disappearing into the rain while I sat there crying. That broke something inside me. The last wall I had built around myself to keep functioning, to keep hoping, to keep believing that things would get better. I put my head down on my knees and sobbed. The rain soaked through everything, my hair, my clothes, my shoes, the suitcases beside me that contained everything I had left in the world. My baby kicked, once, twice, like she was trying to remind me that she was there. "I am sorry," I whispered to her, my voice lost in the sound of the rain. "I am so sorry. Mommy does not know what to do. Mommy does not know how to fix this." I looked up at the traffic passing by. The headlights blurred through my tears in the rain, streaking into long lines of light that seemed to go on forever. For one horrible moment, a dark thought crossed my mind. A thought about how easy it would be to make the pain stop. A thought about stepping into those lights and letting everything end. Then my baby kicked again. Hard. So hard it almost hurt. And I heard my mother's voice in my memory, clear as if she were sitting beside me. "You are stronger than you know, Elena. You will survive this. You will survive anything. Because you are my daughter, and my daughter does not give up." I stood up on shaking legs. I was soaking wet and freezing, and I had no idea what to do next. But I was not going to sit in the rain and wait to die, not with my daughter counting on me. I found a payphone on the corner, one of the last ones left in the city. I scrounged in my pocket for quarters, found just enough, and dialed the only person I had left. Grace answered on the first ring. Grace Williams worked at the coffee shop with me before I was fired. She was 53 years old, divorced, raising two teenagers on her own while working two jobs. She had nothing to spare. But when I had started at the coffee shop, exhausted and pregnant and clearly struggling, she had taken me under her wing, taught me the tricks of the bum, shared her lunch when she noticed I was not eating, listened when I needed to vent about Derek. She was the closest thing to a friend I had in the world. "Elena?" Her voice was concerned. "What is wrong? Where are you?" I told her everything, the divorce, the video, the jobs, the eviction, the rain. "Stay right there," she said immediately. "Do not move. I am coming to get you." 20 minutes later, Grace pulled up in her ancient Honda Civic, the one that made that grinding noise every time she turned left. She jumped out without even bothering to open an umbrella, ran to me, and wrapped her arms around my soaking wet body. "It is going to be okay," she said, even though we both knew she could not promise that. "We are going to figure this out together. You are not alone." She helped me load my suitcases into her trunk. She gave me a towel from her back seat and turned the heat up as high as it would go. She drove me across town to her small apartment, the one she shared with her two teenagers in a building that was not much better than the one I had just been evicted from. "You can stay on my couch as long as you need," she said. "It is not much, but it is warm and dry, and you will have food and a roof over your head." "I cannot ask you to do this," I protested weakly. "You have your own family to take care of. You do not have room for me." "You did not ask," Grace said firmly, I offered. "And my kids will survive, having a little less space for a while. That is what family does. And you are family now, whether you like it or not." I cried again. But for the first time in days, they were not entirely tears of despair. It was not much. Grace's couch was too short for my pregnant body, and I could hear every sound in that small apartment. And I knew I was putting a burden on a family that was already struggling. But it was enough to survive another day. And sometimes, that is all you need. One more day. One more chance to figure out what comes next. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my entire life. I slept on Grace's couch, which was worn and lumpy, and about 6 inches too short for me to stretch out completely. My pregnant belly made every position uncomfortable. I would lie awake at night listening to Grace's teenagers argue through the thin walls, feeling my daughter kick against my ribs, wondering if I would ever be able to give her a real home. I took odd jobs wherever I could find them. Nothing that required a background check or references that might connect me to the viral video. Cleaning houses for people who paid cash under the table. Walking dogs for busy professionals who did not ask questions. Helping an elderly woman in Grace's building with her grocery shopping and errands. It was not enough to save money. It was barely enough to contribute something to Grace's household expenses, so I did not feel like a complete burden. I was 8 months pregnant now, huge and uncomfortable and exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. Every morning I woke up on that lumpy couch and had to convince myself to keep going for just one more day. Then the letter arrived. Grace brought it to me one afternoon, looking confused. It had been forwarded from my old apartment address, the one I had been evicted from. The envelope was thick, made of expensive cream-colored paper that seemed impossibly out of place in our modest surroundings. The return address said Ashford and Wright, attorneys at law, with a Manhattan address that I knew was in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. Elena, Grace said, handing it to me carefully. This looks important and expensive. Do you know anyone named Ashford? No, I said, just as confused as she was. I have never heard that name before. I opened the envelope with trembling hands, not sure what to expect. Inside was a single-page letter on letterhead that matched the envelope, written in formal legal language. Dear Ms. Elena Parker, it began, we are writing regarding a matter of significant importance concerning your inheritance. Your presence is requested at our offices at your earliest convenience. This pertains to the estate of your grandmother, Margaret Ashford, and assets that have been held in trust for you since your 18th birthday. Please contact us immediately at the number below. Time is of the essence. Sincerely, Thomas Wright, Esquire. I read the letter 3 times. Then I handed it to Grace and asked her to read it, because I was convinced I must be misunderstanding something. Your grandmother? Grace looked up at me with wide eyes. Elena, I thought you said you did not have any family. I do not, I said, utterly bewildered. My mother never talked about her parents. I always assumed they died before I was born. Well, someone thinks differently. And this letter looks real. That law firm address is in the financial district. Those are not the kind of lawyers who send prank letters. It has to be a scam, some kind of trick. Maybe someone saw the viral video and decided to target me. But even as I said it, something nagged at the back of my mind. The envelope my mother had given me on her deathbed. The safety net from your grandmother, she had called it. The envelope I had kept for 14 years and never opened because I promised I would wait until I really needed it. I looked at Grace. I need to call this number. I need to find out if this is real. The law offices of Ashford and Wright occupied the entire top floor of a skyscraper in the financial district of Manhattan. The elevator ride from the lobby took almost a full minute, climbing past floor after floor of glass and steel, carrying me higher and higher into a world I did not belong in. I felt completely out of place when the elevator doors opened. The reception area was larger than Grace's entire apartment. Marble floors so polished I could see my reflection. Original artwork on the walls that probably cost more than I had ever earned in my entire life. Fresh flowers and crystal vases on every surface. The receptionist was a beautiful woman in her 30s with perfect makeup and an expensive suit. She looked up as I walked in, and I saw her eyes travel over my thrift store maternity clothes, my worn shoes, my exhausted face. I expected her to ask me to leave. Instead, she smiled warmly. Parker, we have been expecting you. Please follow me. She led me down a hallway lined with more artwork and through a door into a conference room that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The table in the center of the room was made of dark wood that gleamed like it had been polished that morning. The chairs looked like they cost more than my old apartment's monthly rent. Please have a seat, the receptionist said. Mr. Wright will be with you shortly. Can I get you anything? Water? Tea? Water would be wonderful, thank you. She nodded and left. I stood at the windows for a moment, looking out at the city spread below me. I had never been this high up before. The view was breathtaking and terrifying at the same time. All those buildings, all those people, all those lives being lived far below me while I stood in this impossible room, waiting to find out if my whole world was about to change. The door opened behind me. I turned to find a man in his 60s walking toward me with his hand extended. He was distinguished looking, with silver hair and kind eyes and a suit that looked like it had been tailored specifically for his body. He carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who was very, very good at his job. "Elena," he said, shaking my hand gently, "thank you so much for coming. I am Thomas Wright. I have been waiting for this meeting for 14 years. "I do not understand," I said. "The letter mentioned my grandmother, but I do not have a grandmother. I do not have any family at all." Thomas gestured for me to sit, and he took the chair across from me. A folder sat on the table in front of him, thick with papers. "I know this is confusing," he said, "and I promise I will explain everything. But I need you to understand that what I am about to tell you is going to change your entire life. Are you ready for that?" "I do not think I have a choice," I said. "My life has already been changed beyond recognition in the past few weeks. It cannot get much worse." Thomas smiled, but there was sadness in his expression. "No," he said softly, "it cannot get worse. But it can get remarkably, almost impossibly better. Let me tell you a story." He opened the folder and spread several documents across the table between us. "Your mother," he began, "was not born Catherine Parker. She was born Catherine Ashford. She was the only child of William and Margaret Ashford." I felt the world tilt slightly. My mother had lied about her entire identity? "William and Margaret were successful," Thomas continued. "Very successful. They built Ashford Holdings from nothing, starting with a single rental property in the 1970s and growing it into one of the largest real estate companies on the East Coast. But they were also strict, demanding. They had expectations for their daughter that Catherine did not share." "What happened?" My voice sounded far away to my own ears. "Catherine fell in love with a man named Robert Parker. Your father. William and Margaret did not approve. They thought he was taking advantage of their daughter, using her for access to their wealth. There were terrible arguments. Ultimatums were issued. And when Catherine turned 22, she made a choice. She chose my father. She chose your father." Thomas nodded. "She ran away, changed her name, disappeared completely. She wanted nothing to do with her parents or their money. She wanted to build her own life on her own terms. I thought of my mother working double shifts as a nurse to pay our bills, living in small apartments, never buying anything new for herself so she could afford things for me. She spent her whole life struggling," I said. "She died in a public hospital because she could not afford better care. And her parents were wealthy enough to help?" "Her parents were devastated," Thomas said gently. "They spent years trying to find her. Private investigators, missing persons reports, every resource they had. But Catherine was smart. She covered her tracks well. She did not want to be found." He pushed a document toward me. "Your grandmother Margaret never stopped hoping that Catherine would come home, and she never stopped loving her. When Margaret was diagnosed with terminal cancer 14 years ago, she rewrote her will." I stared at the document. It was dense with legal language, but one phrase jumped out at me. "Sole beneficiary. She left everything to you," Thomas said. "Everything. Her entire share of Ashford Holdings, which was 50% of the company, all of her personal assets, everything she had spent her life building." I looked up at him. "What do you mean by everything?" Thomas slid another document across the table. This one was simpler, just numbers. At the top of the page was a figure that made no sense. I read it 3 times, certain I was hallucinating. $1.3 billion. "Ashford Holdings owns commercial real estate in 15 countries," Thomas explained. "Office buildings, hotels, shopping centers. We have a 3% stake in this very building we are sitting in right now. And as of your 18th birthday, when your grandmother passed away, all of Margaret's holdings transferred to you." I started laughing. I could not help it. The sound was high and slightly hysterical, and I could not make it stop. "This is insane," I managed to say. "This is impossible. I have been working 3 jobs. I was homeless last month. I sat in the rain with everything I owned in 2 suitcases." "I know," Thomas said. and his voice was heavy with emotion. We know, and I am so sorry it took us this long to find you. But how did you find me? Why now? Thomas hesitated. There is someone who wants to explain that part himself, someone who has been waiting a very long time to meet you. The door to the conference room opened. An elderly man walked in. He was 72 years old with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that looked exactly like the ones I saw in the mirror every morning. He was tall, well built for his age, with the kind of posture that suggested military training somewhere in his past. His suit was expensive but understated, nothing flashy, nothing designed to impress, just quality. But it was his expression that caught my attention, the way he looked at me, like he was seeing a ghost. You look just like her, he said, his voice cracking slightly. Just like my Catherine. I stood up automatically, not knowing what else to do. Are you William Ashford? He nodded, not trusting himself to speak for a moment. You are my granddaughter, the only family I have left in this world. And I have been searching for you for over 30 years. He crossed the room and hugged me. I should have stiffened, should have pulled away. This was a stranger, someone I had never met, claiming a connection I had no way to verify. But his arms around me felt like coming home. Like a piece of me I had not known was missing had suddenly clicked into place. I am so sorry we did not come sooner, he said into my hair. I wanted to approach you carefully, prove that this was real before disrupting your life. I have known where you were for 3 years, Elena. I have been watching from a distance, trying to find the right moment. 3 years? You knew where I was for 3 years? He pulled back and looked at me, his eyes wet with tears he was not ashamed to show. I wanted to do this right. You had a life, a husband, a baby on the way. I did not want to appear out of nowhere like some lunatic claiming to be your family. I planned to approach you gradually, introduce myself, prove my identity before telling you about the inheritance. His expression darkened, and then I got an invitation to a party. What kind of invitation? Your husband Derek sent invitations to everyone in the real estate industry. He was trying to attract investors for his company. Harrison Caldwell and other potential investors, it said. I recognized the Caldwell name. I had heard rumors about Harrison's daughter Victoria and some young entrepreneur she had been seeing. William's hands clenched at his sides. I decided to attend, to evaluate your husband before revealing myself, to see what kind of man my granddaughter had married. He looked directly at me, and I saw in his eyes a rage that was all the more frightening for being so controlled. I was at that party, Elena. I watched everything that happened. I watched your husband destroy you in front of 200 people. I watched his mother clap with joy. I watched that woman record your pain for entertainment. You were there, I whispered. You saw everything. Everything. And I made a decision in that moment. Your husband and everyone who helped him hurt you are going to learn what happens when they target an Ashford. He took my hands in his. You are not alone anymore, sweetheart. You have family. You have resources. And you have time to figure out who you want to become. He smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Come home, Elena. Let me take care of you and my great-granddaughter. Let me try to make up for all the years we lost. 4 weeks later, my entire existence had been transformed. I gave birth to my daughter in the maternity ward of Mount Sinai Hospital, one of the best medical facilities in New York City. My room was private, spacious, with windows that overlooked the park. A team of specialists monitored every moment of my labor and delivery, and when my daughter finally arrived, screaming her presence to the world, I was surrounded by people who genuinely cared about both of us. I named her Hope, because that is exactly what she gave me, I told my grandfather as he held her for the first time, tears streaming down his weathered face. She gave me hope when I had none left. She kicked when I was thinking about giving up. She reminded me that I had something to live for. William looked down at his great-granddaughter, this tiny human who represented the continuation of everything he had built, and I saw something in his expression that I had never seen in Derek's face when we talked about our baby. Unconditional love, absolute devotion, the willingness to do anything, sacrifice anything for this child. She is an Ashford, he said softly, and Ashfords take care of their own, always. The changes to my life came so quickly that I sometimes felt dizzy trying to keep up with them. I moved from Grace's couch to a penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park. Not just any penthouse, but 3,700 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows, marble countertops, and appliances that cost more than my old apartment's yearly rent. The nursery alone was larger than the studio I had shared with Derek. Hope's room had been professionally decorated before we arrived. Soft pink walls, a crib that probably cost $5,000, stuffed animals and children's books, and everything a baby could ever need. My grandfather had hired a team to prepare for his great-granddaughter, and they had clearly spared no expense. I want her to have everything, William explained, when I protested that it was too much. I missed your mother's childhood completely. I missed your childhood completely. I will not miss Hope's. He also insisted on full-time help, a baby nurse to assist during the night feedings so I could actually sleep, a housekeeper to manage the apartment so I did not have to worry about cleaning while recovering from childbirth, a driver on call whenever I needed to go anywhere. You need to heal, he said firmly when I tried to argue. You have been running on empty for years, taking care of everyone else while neglecting yourself. Now it is your turn to be taken care of. His wife, Dorothy, my step-grandmother, became a constant presence in my life. She was 68 years old, elegant and fierce, the kind of woman who could silence a room with a single raised eyebrow. She had married William 15 years after Catherine ran away, and though she had never been able to have children of her own, she threw herself into the role of grandmother with remarkable enthusiasm. Let me tell you about your grandmother, Margaret, she said one afternoon while we sat in my living room, Hope sleeping peacefully in her arms. She was remarkable, strong in a way that most people never have to be. She built half of this empire with her own hands, while everyone around her said she would fail. Tell me, I said. Tell me everything. So Dorothy did. She told me about Margaret growing up poor, working as a secretary to pay for night school classes in real estate, about meeting William when he was a young man with big dreams and no money, and believing in him when no one else would, about buying their first rental property with money she had saved for years, $1 at a time. She told me about Catherine, my mother, about how headstrong she had been as a child, about the arguments over Robert Parker, my father, and the terrible things that were said on both sides, about the morning Catherine disappeared and the decades of searching that followed. Margaret never stopped loving her, Dorothy said softly, never stopped hoping she would come home. And when she was dying, all she talked about was you, the granddaughter she would never meet but loved anyway. She wrote you a letter, you know, I know. I found it in the envelope my mother gave me. I read it after I found out about all of this. The letter was still in my bedroom, tucked safely in my nightstand. I had read it so many times I had memorized it. My dearest Elena, my grandmother had written, if you are reading this, then your mother kept her promise, and you have found your way to us. I am sorry I will not be there to meet you. I am sorry for so many things, but I want you to know that you come from strong women. Women who build empires from nothing. Women who survive what would destroy others. Whatever challenges you are facing, you have the strength to overcome them. It is in your blood. All my love. Your grandmother, Margaret. She believed in you, Dorothy said. Even though she never met you, she believed in you completely. And now you are here, living the life she wanted for you. I looked at Hope, sleeping peacefully, unaware of the incredible legacy she had been born into. I still do not feel like I belong, I admitted. Sometimes I wake up in this beautiful apartment, and I expect to find myself back on Grace's couch, back in my old life. I keep waiting for someone to tell me this was all a mistake. Dorothy reached over and took my hand. You belong here, she said firmly. This is your inheritance. Not just the money, but the strength, the legacy. You belong here, and anyone who tries to tell you differently will have to go through me first. I spent those first weeks learning everything I could about Ashford Holdings and the empire I had inherited. Thomas Wright walked me through the business structure, explaining how the company was organized and who reported to whom. He introduced me to key executives, all of whom looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, clearly wondering if this unknown heir would be an asset or a liability. My uncle Robert was the most skeptical of all. Robert was my mother's cousin, William's nephew, who had been running daily operations of Ashford Holdings for almost 20 years. He was 45 years old, competent and ambitious, and he had clearly expected to eventually take over the company himself. The sudden appearance of a secret granddaughter had disrupted all of his plans. She has no experience, I overheard him say to William one day when they did not know I was listening. She cannot just walk in and take over because of bloodlines. Running a billion-dollar company requires knowledge, skills, relationships that take decades to build. She is not taking over, William replied calmly. She is learning, and she has more of her grandmother in her than you might think. Give her time. I did not try to take over. I did not pretend to know things I did not know. I just listened and learned and asked questions that probably seemed stupid to the executives who had been doing this work for years. But slowly I started to understand the patterns of the business, the relationships between different parts of the company, the way decisions flowed from the top down and information flowed from the bottom up. And the people who had dismissed me as an interloper began to notice that I was serious, that I was intelligent, that I was, as my grandmother had written in her journal, someone who would figure things out. The viral video faded from public memory. Newer scandals emerged. Fresher entertainment replaced my humiliation in the feeds of millions of strangers. I started to feel safe, started to believe that the worst was behind me. I hired a divorce lawyer, the best one William's money could buy, and filed papers to end my marriage to Derek. I was not asking for anything from him. No alimony, no property division. I just wanted to be free. I thought it would be simple. We had no assets to divide, no complicated financial entanglements. Just a marriage that had ended in the most public and humiliating way possible. The worst is over, I told myself. I can finally move on. I was so wrong. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning. I was feeding Hope in the nursery, enjoying a quiet moment with my daughter, when my lawyer's name appeared on my cell phone screen. Elena, he said, his voice tight in a way that immediately made my stomach drop. We need to talk. What is wrong? The divorce papers were already submitted. Derek has filed a lawsuit. For what? I'm not asking for anything from him. He is claiming that Hope is not his daughter. He wants a DNA test to prove, and I am quoting here, your infidelity during the marriage. That is insane. We already discussed this with his lawyers. The DNA test will prove Hope is his. There is more. He is claiming you committed fraud by hiding your wealthy family. He says you deliberately misled him about your financial situation throughout your marriage. He is demanding half of your inheritance as assets acquired during the marriage. Half of $1.3 billion. And he wants full custody of Hope. I almost dropped the phone. Full custody? He abandoned us. He left me homeless while I was 7 months pregnant. He spread rumors that Hope was not his daughter. And now he wants her? His lawyers are arguing that you are mentally unstable, that the viral video of you crying and running out of the party proves you are unfit to care for a child. The viral video, the recording of me having the worst moment of my life, created by my humiliation, was now being used as evidence that I should lose my daughter. I looked at Hope, happily drinking her bottle, completely unaware that her father was trying to tear her away from me. What do we do? I asked my lawyer, fighting to keep my voice steady. We fight, he said, and with Ashford Resources behind us, we are going to win. But Elena, I have to warn you. This is going to get ugly before it gets better. It got ugly faster than I could have imagined. That same afternoon, I turned on the television to find Victoria Caldwell being interviewed on a national news program. She was dressed beautifully, of course, understated makeup, a sympathetic expression carefully arranged on her face, the perfect picture of a concerned citizen just trying to tell the truth. She manipulated my boyfriend, Victoria said, her voice dripping with false compassion. She pretended to be poor for years, made him feel guilty, made him think he had to take care of her. The whole time she was sitting on a billion-dollar fortune. She is the real gold digger in this story, just a different kind. I stared at the screen, unable to believe what I was hearing. I had been homeless. I had sat in the rain with everything I owned in 2 suitcases. I had skipped meals so Derek could eat. And she was calling me the manipulator? I changed the channel, but the nightmare followed me. Patricia Mitchell was on another program, telling a different version of the same lie. She lied to my son, Patricia said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She deliberately hid her family's wealth to trap him. He thought he was supporting a struggling woman who needed him. He had no idea she came from billions. He is devastated by her deception. By evening, the narrative had completely flipped. The same internet that had mocked me for being pathetic was now mocking me for being a fraud. The same people who had laughed at my humiliation were now outraged by my supposed deception. Wait, she was the rich one the whole time? So she let him feel like a failure when she could have helped him succeed? Gold digger confirmed, just a different kind. She is even worse than we thought. I watched my name trending again, attached to words like liar and fraud and manipulator. I did not know, I said to the empty room, tears streaming down my face. I did not know about any of it, but no one cared about the truth. They had already decided what kind of person I was. Then Grace called. Elena, she was crying so hard I could barely understand her. People are saying I was in on it, that I helped you hide your money, that the whole homeless act was a scam we planned together. What? That is insane. You let me sleep on your couch because I had nowhere else to go. The coffee shop fired me again. They said I was involved in some kind of fraud. I told them it was not true, but they do not believe me. No one believes me. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Grace, I am so sorry. I will fix this. I will tell everyone the truth. It does not matter, she said, her voice hollow. Everyone already decided what they think. The truth does not matter anymore. She was right, and that was the hardest lesson of this entire nightmare. The truth does not matter to people who have already decided you are the villain. They do not want to believe you. Your pain is their entertainment, and they will twist any fact to fit the story they have chosen to tell about you. I had hurt the only friend who had helped me when I had nothing. The woman who had opened her home to a pregnant stranger was now losing her livelihood because of her association with me. That night, I sat in my beautiful penthouse apartment with my beautiful, healthy daughter and cried until I had no tears left. I had everything now. Money, family, resources beyond my wildest imagination. But the people who had hurt me were still winning. They were still controlling the narrative. They were still making me out to be the villain of my own story, and they wanted to take my daughter. William found me in the nursery the next morning, still sitting in the rocking chair where I had spent the entire night, Hope sleeping peacefully in my arms. Tell me what you want to do, he said quietly. I looked up at him. What do you mean? I mean, what do you want the outcome to be? Derek in prison, the Caldwell family destroyed, Patricia living in poverty? Just tell me, and I will make it happen. I stared at my grandfather, the man who had built an empire from nothing, the man who had connections and resources I was only beginning to understand. You can do that? Just decide to destroy someone and make it happen? I have spent 40 years building this company, he said simply. That means 40 years of relationships, 40 years of favors owed, 40 years of learning exactly how powerful people protect themselves and exactly how to cut through those protections. He sat down in the chair across from me. Derek Mitchell committed securities fraud to raise money for his failed companies. I have documented proof that he lied to investors about projected revenues. One phone call to the SEC and his life is over. Victoria Caldwell's father, Harrison, has been competing with Ashford Holdings for properties for decades. One strategic move and I can cost him hundreds of millions of dollars. His daughter's trust fund, her lifestyle, everything she takes for granted, gone. Patricia Mitchell used corrupt connections to arrange illegal custody orders. One investigation and she faces criminal charges. He leaned forward. I can destroy all of them, Elena, but I need to know if that is what you want. Because once we start down this path, there is no going back. I looked at Hope, at this perfect, innocent child who had no idea of the war being fought over her. I want my daughter, I said. I want her safe with me forever. I want them to never be able to hurt us again. And beyond that, I want them to understand what they did. I want them to feel exactly what I felt. I want them to know what it is like to lose everything while the world watches and laughs. William smiled grimly. That I can arrange. But, I added, holding up my hand, I want to be the one who does it. I do not want to hide behind your power. I want to learn how to use it myself. I want to be the one who looks them in the eye when it all falls apart. William's smile transformed into something like pride. You really are your grandmother's heir, he said. She would have said exactly the same thing. Then teach me, I said. Teach me how to fight. William assembled the best legal team money could buy, 12 lawyers from 3 different firms, specialists in family law and corporate litigation and securities fraud. They took over an entire conference room at Ashford Holdings and worked around the clock building our case. The evidence was overwhelming. My mother's death certificate proving she died 14 years before I discovered my inheritance. There was no way I could have known about my grandmother's money when she passed away, because my mother had hidden the information and the documents had remained sealed until after my eviction. My work records from the 3 jobs I held during my marriage, pay stubs, tax returns, documentation proving that I genuinely believed I was struggling, because I was genuinely struggling. My bank statement showing exactly $127.43 on the day Derek evicted me, not the account of someone secretly sitting on billions. The sealed envelope my mother gave me, still bearing her fingerprints, proving it had never been opened until after Derek filed for divorce. Forensic analysis confirmed the seal had not been tampered with in 14 years, and the DNA test, which proved definitively and without any possibility of doubt that Hope was Derek Mitchell's daughter. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in family court. I dressed carefully that day, professional but not flashy, confident but not arrogant. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a mother fighting for her child. Derek was already there when I arrived, sitting at the defendant's table with his lawyer. He looked worse than the last time I had seen him, thinner, pale, dark circles under his eyes that suggested he was not sleeping well. Good, I thought. He deserves every sleepless night. Patricia was in the gallery behind him, wearing her best country club outfit, her face arranged in an expression of maternal concern. Victoria was notably absent. Apparently, she had decided this particular drama was not worth attending. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s named Margaret Thompson. She had a reputation for being fair but ruthless, with no patience for lawyers who wasted her time or clients who lied to her court. She reviewed the evidence in silence for what felt like hours, occasionally asking questions or requesting clarification. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice cold, "let me make sure I understand your position correctly." She picked up a document from the stack in front of her. "You publicly humiliated your wife at a party in front of 200 witnesses. You announced you were divorcing her while she was 7 months pregnant. You had your mother spread rumors that the baby was not yours, a baby that DNA has now conclusively proven is absolutely yours. You had your mistress post a viral video of your wife's worst moment, a video that has been viewed over 4 million times. You terminated the lease on your shared apartment, leaving her homeless at 7 months pregnant." She set down the document and picked up another. "And now you are claiming that she committed fraud, that she somehow knew about an inheritance her mother had deliberately hidden from her, that remained sealed in an envelope for 14 years, that she only discovered after you had already destroyed her life." "Your Honor," Derek's lawyer began, "we believe the evidence will show that Miss Parker had access to information about her family that she concealed." "What evidence?" Judge Thompson interrupted sharply. "The envelope was sealed for 14 years. Her mother died when she was 18. She was working 3 jobs and living in poverty throughout her marriage. Where exactly is the fraud?" Derek's lawyer shuffled his papers nervously. "We are still gathering evidence that will demonstrate a pattern of deception." "You are still gathering evidence." Judge Thompson's voice dripped with contempt. "So you filed this lawsuit, accused this woman of fraud, demanded custody of her child, and you do not actually have evidence to support your claims?" "Your Honor." "Enough." Judge Tasha Thompson held up her hand. "This case is dismissed. The paternity claims are proven false. The fraud claims have no factual basis. The custody demand is not only denied, but noted as an obvious attempt to gain leverage over assets that Mr. Mitchell has no claim to whatsoever." She turned to look directly at Derek. "Mr. Mitchell, this court does not take kindly to parents who weaponize custody proceedings for financial gain. Your conduct throughout this matter has been reprehensible. Public humiliation of a pregnant spouse, spreading false rumors about paternity, leaving your wife homeless, and now this baseless lawsuit. Full custody is awarded to Ms. Parker. You may have supervised visitation if, and only if, Ms. Parker chooses to allow it. Given your behavior, I would understand completely if she chose to deny visitation entirely." Derek's face went pale. "Your Honor, I have a right to see my daughter. You had many rights, Mr. Mitchell. You forfeited most of them when you abandoned your pregnant wife and left her homeless. I suggest you take this time to reflect on the kind of father you want to be, because right now you are not someone I would trust around any child, let alone your own. She turned to me. Miss Parker, I am sorry for what you have been through. This court recognizes that you have been victimized by your former husband and his family. I hope you and your daughter can now move forward in peace. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. I cried with relief outside the courthouse. My lawyers congratulated me. William hugged me tight. It is over, I said. We won. It is finally over. William did not smile. I hope so, he said. But people like the Mitchells do not give up easily. We need to stay vigilant. I should have listened more carefully. 2 weeks later, my world shattered again. I had been at a business meeting downtown, learning about a new property acquisition that Ashford Holdings was considering. Dorothy was watching Hope at my apartment, as she often did when I had professional obligations. It was an ordinary day, an ordinary meeting, an ordinary drive home. Then I turned onto my street and saw the police cars. 3 of them, parked outside my building, lights flashing. My heart stopped. I was out of my car before the driver had even fully pulled over, running toward the entrance on legs that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. The doorman tried to stop me. Ma'am, there has been an incident. The police are upstairs and they need you to wait. I pushed past him, ran for the elevator, slammed my hand against the button for my floor over and over, as if that would make it move faster. The scene in my apartment was chaos. Dorothy was screaming, actually screaming, her elegant composure completely shattered. 2 police officers were holding her back, keeping her away from the door while she fought against them with strength I would not have believed she possessed. A woman in a business suit was walking toward the exit. She was carrying something. She was carrying hope. My daughter was crying, reaching back toward Dorothy with tiny hands, her face red and confused and terrified. I lost all rationality. "What are you doing?" I screamed, lunging toward the woman. "Give me my daughter. Give her back to me right now, ma'am." One of the officers stepped in front of me. "We have a court order. Emergency custody transfer." "What are you talking about?" "I have full custody. The judge ruled 2 weeks ago." "This is a different order, ma'am. Different judge." He handed me paperwork. I looked at it with eyes that could barely focus through my tears and terror. Emergency custody order, signed by Judge Harold Blackwell. The document claimed there were credible concerns about my mental stability. Evidence of erratic behavior, based on the viral video of me crying at the party. Character witnesses confirming my instability, including Patricia Mitchell. Emergency placement with stable family members pending investigation. Stable family members. Derek and Patricia. "This is fraud," I said, my voice rising to a scream. "This is impossible. I just won in court. I have full custody." "Ma'am, I understand you are upset." The officer's voice was calm, professionally detached. "But we have to follow the court order. You can appeal on Monday." It was Friday, 6 in the evening. Courts would not open again for 3 days. They were taking my daughter, taking her to the man who had abandoned us, to the woman who had tormented me for a decade, and there was nothing I could do to stop them. "Please," I begged. "Please, she is only 4 months old. She needs me. Please do not do this. I am sorry, ma'am." They left. The woman in the suit, my daughter in her arms. Hope was screaming now, terrified and confused, and reaching for me as she disappeared through the door. I collapsed. Dorothy caught me before I hit the floor. She held me while I screamed, while I completely shattered, while everything I had rebuilt came crashing down around me. I learned later how it had happened. Patricia Mitchell had connections, old connections, the kind that took decades to build and were almost impossible to break. Judge Harold Blackwell had been college roommates with Patricia's late husband. They had been golf buddies for 30 years. They had attended each other's children's weddings. They were part of the same social circles, the same country clubs, the same network of old money families who protected each other from consequences. Patricia had called in every favor she had accumulated over 62 years of cultivating exactly these kinds of relationships. She had fabricated an emergency based on the viral video of my breakdown at Derek's party. She had convinced a corrupt judge to sign papers after hours, when no one was watching. And Derek had signed too. He had put his name on documents claiming to be a concerned father, worried about his daughter's safety with an unstable mother. The same man who had spread rumors that Hope was not his. The same man who had left us homeless. The same man who had tried to take half my inheritance through a fraudulent lawsuit. He had signed papers to take my daughter because he finally realized the full extent of what he had lost. Not me. Never me. The money. He wanted the money. And if he could not have half of it through the courts, he would use our daughter as leverage to get it another way. I sat in Hope's empty nursery all night. Her blanket still smelled like her. Baby powder and something indefinably sweet that was just her, just my daughter, just the most important person in my entire world. I was shaking. I could not eat. I could not think coherently. I had $1.3 billion, the best lawyers in the country, a powerful family with 40 years of connections, and none of it had been enough to stop them from taking my baby. Ladies, I need you to hear me right now. If anyone ever threatens to take your child, you fight with everything you have. You document everything. You record every conversation if it is legal in your state. You build a paper trail so overwhelming that even a corrupt judge cannot ignore it. You never, ever trust the system to protect you automatically, because the system can be bought by people with connections and no conscience. I learned that lesson in the hardest way possible. And I learned something else too. That night, sitting in my daughter's empty nursery, holding her blanket to my chest and crying until I had no tears left, I finally understood something that changed everything. I had spent my entire life being pushed around by Derek, by Patricia, by Victoria, by employers and strangers in a world that seemed determined to break me. I had always responded by trying harder, by being better, by hoping that if I just worked hard enough, everything would eventually be okay. But hard work and hope had not saved me. They had just made me easier to victimize. Money does not protect you from evil. Power does not protect you from people who have no conscience. But money and power can destroy evil people if you are willing to use them. I was willing now. I was done being a victim, done hoping things would get better on their own, done believing that the universe would eventually deliver justice without my help. My grandfather found me in the nursery at dawn. "Tell me what you need," he said quietly. I looked up at him with eyes that felt like they belonged to a different person than the woman I had been a year ago. A harder person, a more dangerous person. "I need you to teach me how to destroy them," I said. "All of them, forever." William nodded slowly. "Then let us get to work." We got Hope back on Saturday morning. My lawyers worked through the night, filing emergency motions and compiling evidence against Judge Blackwell. By dawn, they had found enough to demand an immediate hearing with a different judge. The evidence was damning. Blackwell had signed the custody order after hours, at Patricia Mitchell's personal request. Phone records proved she had called him 3 times in the hour before he signed. He had a documented history of suspicious rulings favoring the Mitchell family going back 15 years. Every time one of Patricia's friends or associates had needed a favorable decision, they had somehow ended up in front of Judge Blackwell, enter me in Rubin's room. And most incriminating of all, he had received a $50,000 donation to his daughter's trust fund from a company connected to Patricia Mitchell. The donation had been made just 3 days before he signed the order to take Hope. The new judge was furious. "This emergency order was obtained through fraud," she declared, her voice shaking with anger. "Judge Blackwell's conduct will be referred to the Judicial Ethics Board for immediate investigation. Hope Parker is to be returned to her mother immediately." Police were dispatched to the Mitchell residence. I went with them. I wanted to see Patricia's face when she realized she had lost. She tried to refuse at the door, threatening to call her lawyers, claiming we were harassing her. "Ma'am," the officer said, his patience clearly exhausted, "you can cooperate and hand over the child, or we can arrest you for contempt of court and interference with a custody order. Your choice." She cooperated. Hope was placed back in my arms. She was crying, confused and upset after a night away from everything familiar. But the moment she felt me holding her, she started to calm. "Mommy is here," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Mommy is never letting anyone take you again." I looked at Patricia, standing on her porch in her designer bathrobe, her face twisted with hatred and humiliation. This is not over, I said. You tried to take my child. You bribed a judge. You fabricated evidence. I will never stop until you have paid for every single thing you did. You cannot threaten me, she spat. I have friends. I have connections. You had connections, I corrected her. Past tense. By this time next week, Judge Blackwell will be disbarred. Everyone who knew about this scheme will be questioned. And your precious network of old money favors will learn exactly what happens when they help you hurt in Ashford. I turned and walked away. Hope against my heart. Victory in my soul. Over the following months, I systematically destroyed everyone who had tried to destroy me. Derek was first. The SEC investigation had been building quietly for weeks. Derek had committed securities fraud, lying to investors about projected revenues, fabricating financial reports, stealing money from people who trusted him. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. I personally delivered the final documentation to the investigators. I sat in the courtroom for his trial, front row. Hope on my lap, now 8 months old and curious about everything around her. Derek saw me the moment he was brought in. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and I watched his face crumble as he understood exactly what was happening. His lawyer tried everything: first-time offender, personal difficulties, extenuating circumstances. He was under stress. He never meant to hurt anyone. The judge was unmoved. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice cold with contempt, you defrauded investors of over $2 million. You abandoned your pregnant wife. You spread false rumors about the paternity of your own child. You participated in a scheme to illegally remove your daughter from her mother's custody through a corrupt judge. She paused. 12 years in federal prison. Derek was led away in handcuffs. He looked back at me one final time, and I saw in his eyes the complete understanding of everything he had thrown away. I did not look away. I watched until the door closed behind him. Then I took Hope home. Victoria was next. I called her father, Harrison Caldwell, directly. My first time using the full weight of my name and position as a weapon. Mr. Caldwell, I said, I believe your company is bidding on the Morrison Plaza development. I want you to know that Ashford Holdings will be raising our bid by $50 million specifically to ensure you lose. What? Why would you do that? Your daughter posted a video of me at the worst moment of my life. She called my employers to get me fired from all 3 of my jobs. She went on television and called me a gold digger. She helped spread lies that nearly cost me my child. I am sure Victoria did not mean to cause such serious harm. She absolutely did. And now her cruelty will cost your company approximately $300 million in lost deals over the next 5 years. Every property you want, I will want more. Consider it a long-term investment in teaching your daughter that actions have consequences. I hung up before he could respond. Harrison lost the Morrison Plaza deal, then the waterfront project, then the downtown renovation he had been cultivating for years. Each loss cost him tens of millions of dollars and damaged his reputation in the industry. Victoria's trust fund took a direct hit. Her lifestyle crumbled. And for the first time in her 34 years of entitled existence, she had to get a job. Patricia was last, but her fall was the most complete. I filed a civil lawsuit against her for harassment, fraud, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The evidence was overwhelming. Her phone records, her communications with Judge Blackwell, her media interviews spreading provable lies about me. Her lawyers tried to settle. They offered money. They offered apologies. They offered anything to make it go away. I refused. This goes to trial, I told my attorneys. I want the world to see exactly what she did. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every dirty detail of Patricia's scheme was exposed. The bribery, the fabricated evidence, the corrupt judge, the network of favors she had built over decades. The jury awarded me $20 million in damages. Patricia lost everything. Her house was sold to pay the judgment. Her savings were depleted by legal fees. Her membership at the country club she had lorded over everyone from was revoked. Her precious social standing crumbled to dust. She moved into a small apartment in a neighborhood she once would have been afraid to drive through. She took a job as a grocery store clerk because no one else would hire her. She said I should try a homeless shelter, I told Dorothy when I heard the news. She said they'd take my type. Now she is living in conditions worse than anything I ever experienced. Is it enough? Dorothy asked. Do you feel better? I thought about it for a long moment. I feel complete, I finally said. I feel like the scales are balanced, and I never have to think about her again. Judge Harold Blackwell was removed from the bench and disbarred. The Judicial Ethics Board found him guilty of corruption on multiple counts. He is currently under investigation for 14 other suspicious rulings throughout his career. He wrote me a letter begging for mercy, claiming he had never meant for anyone to get hurt. I never responded. 1 year after the night my husband destroyed me at that party, I returned to the Wellington Grand Hotel. The same ballroom, the same crystal chandeliers, the same marble floors where I had run in tears while 200 people recorded my humiliation. But tonight, every banner bore a different name. The Ashford Foundation, Hope's House Charity Gala. 600 guests filled the room. Press photographers lined the walls. Politicians and celebrities and business leaders had come to support our cause. Hope's House, a network of shelters, legal aid services, and job training programs for women escaping abusive relationships. Named after my daughter, funded by my grandmother's fortune, run by me. I stood backstage, wearing a silver gown that cost more than I had made in a year at my 3 jobs. Hope was with Dorothy in a private suite upstairs, too young for the crowd but close enough that I could see her whenever I needed to. I was not nervous. I was ready. The crowd quieted as I took the stage. Before I begin, I said into the microphone, "I want to show you something." The massive screens behind me lit up. The viral video started playing. 4 million views of me being humiliated. Derek's announcement. Patricia's clapping. Victoria's recording. My face crumbling. My desperate run through the laughing crowd. The room went completely silent. 600 people watched in uncomfortable stillness as my worst moment played out in full. When it ended, I spoke. That was me. 14 months ago. 7 months pregnant. Abandoned by my husband. Mocked by 200 strangers. That video has been viewed over 4 million times. People watched my worst moment like it was entertainment. I paused, letting the weight of it settle over the room. I am not showing you this for pity. I am showing you this because somewhere right now there is another woman having her worst moment. And the world is laughing at her too. I looked out at the crowd, finding faces I recognized, connecting with eyes I did not. Hope's House exists because no woman should face that moment alone. Last year, we helped 12,000 women leave abusive situations. We provided legal aid for 3,000 custody cases. We gave shelter to 8,000 children who had nowhere else to go. The applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation. I raised my hand for quiet. To the woman I was in that video, I said, my voice steady and strong, I want to tell you what I wish someone had told me back then. Your lowest moment is not your final moment. The people laughing at your pain do not determine your worth. And sometimes, the worst thing that happens to you is just the setup for the best thing that will ever happen. Keep going. Your inheritance is coming. After my speech, security approached me quietly. Miss Parker, there is someone here who should not be. She is working as catering staff. We can remove her if you want. I knew who it was before he said the name. Where is she? I found Victoria Caldwell in the back service area wearing a black catering uniform, loading champagne glasses onto a tray. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her designer watch was gone. The confidence that had radiated from her like a weapon was completely extinguished. She looked up and saw me. Her face went white. "Elena," she stammered, "I did not know you would be here. They did not tell me this was your event. I will leave. I just need this job and—" I watched her struggle to find words. This woman who had once smiled while recording my destruction. "You recorded the worst moment of my life and posted it for entertainment," I said calmly. "You called my employers to get me fired. You went on television and called me a gold digger. You helped spread lies that nearly cost me my daughter." Victoria started crying. Actual tears streaming down her face, smearing the cheap makeup she was now forced to wear instead of the designer cosmetics she had grown up with. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am so sorry. I did not think about what it would do to you. I just thought it was funny." "I know," I said. "That is exactly the problem. You did not think of me as a person. I was just content. Entertainment. A joke." I stepped closer to her. I want you to remember something, Victoria. When you were recording me that night, you thought you were documenting my end. Instead, you were documenting your own. Every cruel thing you did came back to you. I turned to leave, then paused. I hope you learn from this. I hope you become someone better than you were. But I will never forget what you did, and neither will you. I walked away. Victoria stood there in her catering uniform, holding champagne glasses for people who used to envy her, surrounded by a life that used to be hers but never would be again. 5 years later, I sit in the garden of the Ashford estate in Connecticut, watching my daughter run through the flowers. Hope is 5 years old now, with my dark hair and an endless supply of energy and curiosity about everything she encounters. The summer sunshine falls golden across the lawn where my grandmother Margaret once played as a child, where my mother Catherine ran through these same gardens before she made the choice to leave everything behind, where I have finally, after all these years, found home. William sits beside me. He is 77 now, a little slower than he used to be, but his mind is as sharp as ever. Dorothy is chasing Hope through the rose bushes, pretending to be a friendly monster while my daughter shrieks with delighted terror. This is my life. This is what survived the fire. Hope runs over, clutching an old photo album she found in the library. "Mommy, look what I found!" She climbs into my lap, still small enough to fit perfectly, and opens the album. The photographs inside document a family I never knew I had until 5 years ago. She points to a young woman in one of the early pictures. A woman who looks exactly like me. "Who is this?" "That is your great-grandmother," I tell her. "Her name was Margaret. She built everything we have." "She is pretty," Hope says. "She looks like you, Mommy." I smile. "I know, baby." Hope keeps flipping through pages. Pictures of Margaret at different ages. My mother as a child, laughing in this very garden. Family gatherings I was never part of, but feel connected to anyway. Then she stops at a different picture. A wedding photo that somehow got mixed in with the others. Derek and me, smiling, happy, completely unaware of the destruction that was coming. "Mommy," Hope asks, her small finger pointing at the image. "Who is this man?" I look at the photograph for a long moment. The man I loved. The man who destroyed me. The man who is currently serving year 7 of his 12-year sentence. He writes to me sometimes. Letters I have never opened. He wants to see Hope. I have never allowed it. He is nobody important, sweetheart. Nobody at all. "Oh," Hope says, already moving on to the next page. "Okay." She finds a portrait of William and Margaret together, young and in love before the decades of searching for their lost daughter. "That is great-grandpa William," Hope announces proudly. "And that is great-grandma Margaret, the one who gave us everything." "That is right, baby. She loved you very much, even before you were born." Hope nods seriously, accepting this as simple fact, the way children accept that the sky is blue and flowers need water. She jumps down from my lap to show Dorothy the album, running across the lawn with boundless energy. William watches her go. "Your grandmother would have loved her," he says quietly. "She would have loved both of you. I wish I had known her." He takes my hand. "You did know her. You are exactly like her. She built an empire from nothing. She survived a man who tried to break her. And she left behind something beautiful." He squeezes my hand gently. "Just like you." I watch Hope playing in the sunshine. My daughter, who will never know poverty, who will never know cruelty from the people who should love her, who will grow up knowing exactly how much she is worth. Derek is in prison, surrounded by concrete walls and metal bars, knowing exactly what he threw away. Patricia is working at a grocery store, living in a tiny apartment, watching her precious social standing crumble to nothing. Victoria is serving champagne to people who used to be her equals, learning for the first time what it feels like to be invisible. And I am here, in my grandmother's garden, with my grandfather's hand in mine, with my daughter's laughter echoing across the lawn. My grandmother left me money, but that was never the real inheritance. The real inheritance was proof that a woman can survive anything, that she can rebuild from nothing, that she can turn pain into power and loss into legacy. Derek thought he was divorcing a poor, desperate woman with nothing to offer. He was divorcing the heir to a billion-dollar empire. He just did not know it. And now he sits in a prison cell, writing letters I will never read, knowing exactly what he lost. Not just the money, Not just the life he could have had, but the daughter who does not even know his name. When Hope asked who he was, I told her the truth. Nobody important. Nobody at all. Because that is exactly what he chose to become.